Good morning, friends. Today we are going to discuss about the important autoimmune disorder, that is SLE. And in last class we have discussed that it is basically the antibody mediated. So there is a production of autoantibodies in this condition, and this is very commonly seen in the young females. So we will talk about this today. Myself, Dr. S. K. Sutrkar, Department of Pathology. So as we have discussed in the last class that the autoimmune disorders, uh, to say someone is suffering from autoimmune disorders, there are certain criterias. The first criteria is the presence of immune reaction, and this reaction should be with the self antigens or self tissue. So the antigen antibody reaction occurring to our self tissue or self antigen. So that is a first criteria. Second one is this immune reaction which is occurring between our own tissues. It should not be a secondary type of reaction. It should be a primary type of reaction, or it should be have the primary pathology. And the third one is there should be absence of a well defined cause of the another any other diseases. So these are the few criteria they have made. So if we go through more specifically for the SLE, so it is a complex disorder of multifactorial origin. So there are multiple factors which interact together and result in the development of these autoantibodies, especially the genetic factors, immunological factors, and the environmental factors. So these all factors they combines together, and they provoke the production of the antibody form autoantibody are found basically. And the tissue injuries basically mediated by these autoantibodies. So this is very important. So we will discuss how these autoantibodies are produced and what are the factors they are responsible for the production of these autoantibodies. And and the more specifically the injury will takes place in the skin joints and the other sites, especially the serosal membranes. So this is very important for the clinical purposes, that multiple organs they are, or multiple sites they have been involved in this condition. And as we have said that it is very common in the young females who range from in the basically 18 or 20 year of age to 45 or year of age, and there is a prevalence of 9:1 is seen. So the hallmark of these conditions is the autoantibodies, means the antibodies which are directed against our cell tissue, or especially these antibodies are basically reactive to our nuclear antigens, cytoplasmic antigens of the cell component, and these are considered to be the diagnostic and pathogenic significance, and they basically play important role in the management of the patient. So this is a diagram showing that these anti-nuclear antibodies are frequently found in this condition, especially the SLE. And these antibodies they are directed against the DNA and the histones and the ribonuclear proteins, basically the nuclear protein they are which are present in the nucleus, and they also directed against the non-histone protein as well. So this is very important that there is a development of these antibodies, and they are directed against the nuclear antigens. So this is the same diagrammatic chart. Here we can see the anti-double stranded DNA antibody. It is basically seen in 40 to 60% cases of nephritis, and the anti-U1 ribonuclear protein antibodies they are basically 30 to 40% they are seen, and they consider to be specific for the SLE. And anti-Smith antibodies is another important antibodies which is very specific for the SLE, and it is seen around 20 to 30% of cases. And apart from this, there are anti-Rho antibodies which are basically associated with the neonatal lupus as well as the congenital heart blocks, and they are around 30 to 50% they are seen in these conditions. Apart from that, there is a anti-phospholipid antibodies, and these anti-phospholipid antibodies basically result in the anti-phospholipid antibody syndrome, primary and secondary type. And these all all autoantibodies basically they are called as generic uh, anti-nuclear antibodies because they are directed against the nuclear components. So mostly these all basically these antibodies they will seen in different type of conditions. So if we go through the here we can see in the diagram that the chart is showing that nature of the antigen, the antibodies which are basically produced, and in the SLE the frequency of these antibodies which are seen. So this is already we have discussed in the previous chart that these antibodies are basically directing against the different type of antigens, especially the DNA, histones, and ribonuclear proteins, and centromeric proteins. So these are the antibodies which basically seen in the SLE. So there are certain patterns we can observe when we do the indirect immunofluorescence technique, and this immunofluorescence technique basically is considered to be the more sensitive, but it is less specific. So this is a very important point. The immunofluorescence technique by which we used to detect these patterns, it is very sensitive, but it is not specific for the diagnosis of SLE. So here you can see the pattern 1 is also called as peripheral pattern, or the basically rim pattern. Rim pattern or peripheral pattern is basically seen in the antibodies which are directing as the double stranded DNA, and they are commonly seen in the SLE as we have already discussed. Another pattern on the left side you can see the homogeneous pattern, and homogeneous or diffuse pattern, and here the antibodies they are basically directed against the chromatin or the histones, and this is commonly seen in the uh, drug induced autoimmune disorders. Third pattern is the speckled pattern, and it is the most common pattern, and it is a highly non-specific pattern, and you can see it is seen due to the anti-Smith antibodies, and this pattern basically here the antibodies are basically directed against the non-DNA nuclear constituents uh, such as Smith antigens. So this is another pattern, and it is most common pattern which is observed in the immunofluorescence. And the fourth one is the nuclear pattern, and this pattern is basically seen in the systemic sclerosis. So these are the four important patterns which we can observe under the immunofluorescence. So this is the same chart. Here you can see the different type of patterns, that is the homogeneous pattern or diffuse pattern, and rim pattern, peripheral pattern, speckled pattern, and the nuclear pattern or centromeric pattern. So these are the different type of pattern, and the antibodies uh, which are basically producing these patterns uh, are given in the chart. Apart from this, there are certain other autoantibodies are also seen in the SLE, and these autoantibodies are basically directed against the RBCs, and they will produce the autoimmune hemolytic anemia, and when they will attach with the platelets, or they are damages the platelets, or then they will produce the autoimmune thrombocytopenia, and when the lymphocytes are damaged, they will produce the lymphopenia. So these are the there are certain different type of autoantibodies are also seen in the SLE. Apart from this, there are certain antibodies which are basically directed against the epitopes of the protein, and these epitopes of the protein when they binds with the antibody, and these protein when they will attach to the phospholipids, they will produce the problems, and this is called basically these antibodies they are called as anti-phospholipid antibodies, and these anti-phospholipid antibodies nowadays they are very uh, they are considered to be the very important. So this is basically seen around 40 to 50% of cases, and they are directed against the epitopes of the plasma proteins, especially the plasma protein such as prothrombin, annexin V, and protein C and protein S. And they sometimes these antibody they may react with the beta 2 glycoprotein, a phospholipid, and this basically react with the cardiolipid antigens, and they may produce the false syphilitic test is basically seen. Sometimes these antibody they will interfere with the different type of test which coagulation test, especially the activated partial prothrombin time, and they will basically result in the abnormal readings of these tests, and therefore they are called as lupus anticoagulant. So some of the persons having those who are having this type of antibodies, they despite of having such type of antibodies, they develop certain type of complications, and this hypercoagulable state is very commonly seen in this antiphospholipid antibody syndrome. And these persons basically they develop the venous or arterial thrombi, which may produce the different type of complications. So this is the thing which is has been given in the book, and here you can see in this chart these antibodies, they are directly against the epitopes of the plasma proteins, and these proteins complex with the phospholipids. So this is all is given. If you go through the etiopathogenesis of this condition, there are three important factors: the genetic factors, the immunological factors, and the environmental factors. So as we have said earlier, that this disease is a multifactorial. So different type of factors they will interact each other, and they will produce the problems. So etiopathologically, if we go through the genetic factors, it has been seen that the patient who are suffering from this condition, their family members are also at increased risk to develop this condition. And second is it is commonly seen in the monozygotic twins, and it is basically they are at high risk to develop this condition. Apart from this, some of the MSC association is also seen, or MSC alleles who are having HLA-DQ, they will produce more anti-double stranded DNA antibodies and anti-Smith antibodies. And there is some inherited deficiency of complement as well, C2, C4, and C1q. And these complements basically they are required for the removal of the immune complexes and apoptotic cell by the macrophages. As the deficiency of these complements result in the unclearance of these immune complexes and the apoptotic bodies, that result in the development of the basically the reaction between the antigen and antibody. Apart from this, there are certain genetic loci encoding the protein in the lymphocyte signaling. They also play a very important role in the etiopathogenesis. Now coming to the immunological factors, as we have discussed in the previous class, that there is a concept of self tolerance. This is very important. The our own tissue, it is our own cells, basically our self lymphocyte, they are unresponsive to our own self antigens. So this is called as the self tolerance. They are tolerating our self tissue. But in case of autoimmune disorders, this there is a breakdown of this self tolerance, and there is a production of these self reactive lymphocytes. They are produced, and they are capable of producing the antibodies or autoantibodies. So this is a very important concept of immunological factors, that there is a breakdown in the self tolerance. So here you can see the CD4 helper T cells. They are specific for the nucleosomal antigens. They escape from the central tolerance, and they will reach it through a peripheral pool, and they are very reactive to our nucleosomal antigens. Second one is the toll-like receptors. These receptors basically they are considered to be the microsensor. They will sense the microbial antigen, and they will produce the second signal in the uh, in the in the basically lymphocytes or the macrophages. And whenever these injured DNA or RNA material, when they interact with these receptors, they will produce the second signal, and they will activate the B cells, and this activation result in the production of the autoantibodies. So this is another concept. The third one is the type 1 interferon are basically, they are also mimic the self nucleic acid basically antigens. They mimic with the microbial antigens, and they will produce interferon, and they activate the B cells, and that result in the production of the autoantibodies. Now third one is the environmental factors, and especially the UV light is basically responsible for the injury to the cells and damage to the DNA. And this, whenever this DNA is damaged by this UV light, uh, they will modify the DNA in such a way that it become immunogenic. Immunogenic means it can provoke the production of the basically, or provoke the production of the antibodies. And the second one is the production of the interleukin 1, which is produced during the inflammation, and this inflammation is basically uh, produced when there is exposure to the UV light. Apart from this, there is a basically gender predisposition of the sex chromosome or inactive chromosome, which is basically it has thought that it is also responsible for the some type of problem in the young females. So sex hormones, they are also responsible for the uh, production of these antibodies. Third one is the drugs, especially the D-penicillamine and the hydralazine. These drugs are also one of the important environmental factors which can provoke the uh, production of these autoantibodies. So if we go through the pathogenesis of SLE, here in the chart, basically in the diagram, you can see easily there is a failure of self tolerance, and we have discussed already the someone is having the susceptible genes, there is a failure of self tolerance, and these persons will have the self reactive T cells, B cells and T cells. They are specific for our nuclear antigens, and simultaneously, when there is a external triggers by the UV radiations, they will damage the cells, and by the process of apoptosis. And these apoptotic bodies, they are defective, and they are not cleared from the circulation. And these basically these bodies, they act as a antigens, or they containing the nuclear antigens, and these nuclear antigens basically they react with the antibodies which are produced uh, in response to these antigens, and they will interact with each other, and they will form the immune complexes. So we will have the circulating immune complexes. After the development of these immune complexes, and these immune complexes are formed of the anti DNA antibodies and the DNA antigens. So and these immune complexes basically they are taken up by the basically the cells, and these engaged with the toll-like receptor, as we have discussed. This is responsible for the toll-like receptor are basically required for the sensing of the microbial antigens, but these toll-like receptor, they are engaged with these uh, immune complexes, and they will activate the second signal. And once the second signal is produced, these basically, especially the B cells, they are activated, and they are basically capable of producing the antibodies. Simultaneously, when these basically toll-like receptor, they are engaged by these immune complexes or DNA in the dendritic cell as well, they will produce the type 1 interferon. So this is very important mechanism or pathogenesis. And there is a these two factors, basically environmental factors and the uh, basically immunological factors, they will work together and produce these autoantibodies and the different type of problems. So in 1997, there is a revised criteria for the diagnosis of SLE, and there are 11 basically conditions, out of which 4 conditions, if someone is having these positive for these 4 conditions, it is considered to be the patient of SLE. So these are the 11 different type of abnormalities or problems which we can observe clinically in the patient. First one is the malar rash, second one is the discoid rash, third one is the serositis, and fourth one is the oral ulcer, and fifth one is arthritis, sixth one is photosensitivity, seventh one is the blood abnormalities, and eighth one is the renal abnormalities or renal problems, and ninth one is the anti-nuclear antibodies, and 10th one is the immune abnormalities, and 11th one is the neurological deficit. So these are the few clinical problems which we can observe, or some of the tests which we can do, and we can uh, see the positivity rate. So here you can see the first one is basically malar rash. It is basically a fixed erythematous flat or raised over the malar prominence. uh, So this is a typical type of butterfly rash we can observe over the this malar eminence. Second one is the discoid rash, and it is also erythematous, and it is a right patch with the adherent keratotic scaling is seen. This is the second clinical feature or clinical problem which we can observe, a discoid rash. It is a basically disc type of rash, and is commonly seen over the cheeks. Third one is the photosensitivity, and rash basically is seen when the patient is exposed to the sunlight, and we can observe clinically this also. Another one is the oral ulcers. So there are oral ulcer as well as nasopharyngeal ulceration, and these ulcers, they are basically painless. And arthritis, there is inflammation of joints, and these joints basically they are non-erosive. This is very important. These are non-erosive swollen joints are basically seen, and they are characterized by the swelling and the effusion. Apart from this, the serositis, the pleuritis, and the pericarditis is very common, and pleuritic pain or this pleural rub we can absorb, and the physician can see it absorb with the help of this stethoscope. And pericarditis, there is a certain changes which we can observe in the electrocardiogram. Seventh one is the renal disorder, and the patient will have the proteinuria more than, sometimes the patient will have nephrotic syndrome, or they will have the cellular cast, the presence of RBC in the urine, and presence of hemoglobin granular tubular cast are seen. So these are the renal problems are also very commonly seen when the kidney are involved. Apart from this, the hematological disorders which we can observe, the hemolytic anemia with reticulocytosis. So increased reticulocyte count is seen. Apart from this, decrease in the RBC count, and there is a leukopenia. Leukopenia means there is a decrease in the WBC count less than 4,000 per cubic mm, and is more specifically there is a lymphopenia is also seen, and thrombocytopenia is also observed in case of SLE. Apart from this, there are immunological disorders is also seen. Anti-DNA antibodies can be detected with the help of indirect immunofluorescence, or basically by other serological test which we can do in the lab, and here we can see the presence of this type of autoantibodies. Anti-nuclear antibodies, basically they are can be observed under the immunofluorescence as well. So if we go through the mechanism of the tissue injury in the SLE, here you can see it is basically a immune complex mediated disease. So it is a, whenever there is a formation of immune complexes, or there is a interaction between the antibody and antigen, they will form the immune complex, and this such type of reaction they are called as type 3 hypersensitivity reaction. So in different type of lesions, which basically these complex immune complexes are they are deposited at various place or various organs, and they will produce the injury, and they will produce the clinical symptoms. So here the first important mechanism is it is a type 3 hypersensitivity reaction. As we have said, there is a formation of immune complex, and these are deposited at various sites, Along with there is a consumption of the complement as well. So there is hypocomplementemia is also seen in these conditions. Second one is the autoantibodies. These are directed against the RBC, WBC and platelets, and they opsonize these cells and promote the phagocytosis and lysis that result in the different type of decrease counts. As we can see, the decrease in the RBC count that result in the autoimmune hemolytic anemia, and decrease in the platelet count result in thrombocytopenia. And these damaged cell, basically their nuclei, they will bind with these autoantibodies and they lose their chromatin and they become homogeneous. This is very important. So this is the concept of the test that is called as ELI phenomena or ELI test, ELI cell test detection. And here you can see the damaged cells nuclei, they will bind with the anti-nuclear antibodies and they will lose their chromatin and become homogeneous, and this result in the formation of hematoxylin bodies or lupus erythematosus ELI cells. So they are formed, and these ELI cells basically they are the phagocytic leukocytes, especially the neutrophil or macrophage that has engulfed the denatured nucleus of the injured cell when agitated in the in vitro, basically in the lab. When we agitate the blood of this type of patient, there is a release of nuclear material, and if the antibodies present uh, in this anti-nuclear antibodies are present in their serum, they will react, and these cells, basically the leukocytes and the macrophages, they will engulf the damaged nuclear material, and they will produce this phenomena that is called ELI cell phenomena. So this is the diagrammatic representation. Here you can see in the diagram the neutrophil, it has engulfed the nuclear material or chromatin and it become homogeneous, and this is the typical ELI cell. Nowadays this test is obsoleted. Another mechanism is the mechanism of anti-phospholipids syndrome. This is very important, and multiple problems, as we have discussed in the previous slide, that multiple problems are seen whenever these antibodies, basically anti-phospholipid antibodies, are present in the patient blood. They will interfere with the coagulation profile test, especially the activated partial thromboplastin time. They will increase that time, and they such type of patient who are having such type of antibodies, they are in a hypercoagulable state, and they will produce basically the venous and arterial thrombi, and these antibodies may also interact with the endothelial cells, platelet and clotting factors. If you go through the morphological change in the SLE, these are very important, and more specifically they are related to the skin, and basically the renal or kidneys. So in the skin we can see the malar rash, and urticaria can be seen. There is a formation of bullae, and maculopapular rash is also observed. Apart from this, whenever there is exposure to the sunlight, that initiates the erythema formation, and histologically when we observe this uh, under the microscope, when we do the biopsy and observe this section under the microscope, we will see there is a vacuolar degeneration of the basal layer. This is very important, and there is a dermal edema formation, and there is a inflammation also, that is vasculitis with the fibrinoid necrosis also seen. So this is a typical butterfly rash. Here you can see it is seen over the nasal eminence. So this is a discoid rash, disc-like rash is seen over the cheeks or hands. So this is another, and here you can see under the immunofluorescence there is a IgG deposits along the dermoepidermal junction is seen, and there is a liquefactive degeneration edema in the skin is observed. Other organs such as joints, in the joints we have discussed that there is a non-erosive synovitis, and the spleen become, the capsule become thickened, and the follicular hypoplasia is seen, and this appears as a onion skin lesions, and in the CNS basically the vasculitis or non-inflammatory occlusions of the small vessels is seen, And pericarditis and the serosal cavity involvement is seen, as we have discussed that there is a inflammation, or there is a pericardial rub is basically observed. Apart from this, pleuritis, pleural effusion is also seen in this condition. There is involvement of cardiovascular system, as we have discussed. There is pericarditis, myocarditis, and diffuse wall thickening is observed. And valvular endocarditis is very common, and Levin sac this endocarditis, or non-bacterial verrucous endocarditis, in which there are multiple irregular 1 to 3 millimeter size warty deposits on either side of the leaflets are seen, and that result in the coronary heart disease. And the involvement of kidney is very important, and the morphological classification is done, and it is divided into 6 different type of classes. The class 1 is the minimal mesangial, and class 2 is the mesangial proliferative. Class 3 is the focal lupus nephritis, in which less than 50% of the glomeruli they are involved. Class 4 is the diffuse proliferative, in which more than 50% glomeruli are basically involved. And the fifth one is the membranous and glomerulonephritis, and the sixth one is the advanced sclerosing, or basically there is a fibrosis in the glomeruli is seen. So this is the normal glomeruli we can observe under the H&D section, and on the right side there is a diagrammatic representation showing the podocytes and the these capillary lumen having the endothelial cells, and the mesangial cells is also seen in the red color. So this is the diagrammatic representation of the glomeruli. Here you can see multiple capillary loops which are having the endothelial cells, the mesangial cells in the mesangium, and the podocytes. So the first type of lesion is the minimal mesangial lesions, and there is a immune complex deposition in the mesangium, and this can be identified by the indirect immunofluorescence, and minimal type of change we can see in the glomeruli. Second one is the mesangial proliferative. So in the diagram you can observe there is a proliferation of the mesangial cell, and the production of these mesangial matrix is observed in the diagram as well. So such type of patient will have the mild hematuria, transient proteinuria, and there is an increase in the mesangial cells as well as the mesangial matrix. And under the immunofluorescence we can observe the granular mesangial deposits of immune complexes and complements. Third one is the focal lupus nephritis. So here we have already discussed that less than 50% of part of the glomeruli is involved, and 1 to 2 tuft is showing increased cellularity and fibronite deposition, as well as the hyaline thrombi are seen in the diagram, and focal necrotizing lesions are also present, and such type of patient will have the mild hematuria as well as the proteinuria. So they may be having the nephritic syndrome. Fourth one is the diffuse lupus. Here we can see the more than 50% of the glomeruli they are affected, and the glomeruli will show the hypercellularity, and there is a crescent formation, and the fibronite necrosis are also seen. And apart from this, we can see the leukocytes or inflammatory cells, apoptotic bodies, and hyaline thrombi, and subendothelial immune complexes deposition is seen, and such type of lesions they are called as Bayer loop lesions, and they can be very well demonstrated with the help of the PAS stain, and such type of patient will have the hematuria, proteinuria, hypertension, and renal efficiency. So typically these patients will have the nephritic syndrome. So this is the diagrammatic representation or H&D section of this particular. You can see the increased cellularity is seen in the glomeruli, lot of cellularity. There is a presence of inflammatory cell. Apart from this, mesangial cell they are proliferated, endothelial cells they are proliferated, and on the right side you can see the Bayer loop lesions. So this is the electron microscopic view of these Bayer loop lesions, and we can observe in the electron micrograph that there is a subendothelial immune complex deposition in the SLE patient, and these deposition are basically dense deposit, and they are corresponding to the wire loops. So here you can see in the subendothelial region there is a dense deposition of these immune complexes. So this is the same PAS stain. Here you can see the wire loop lesions. They can be demonstrated with the help of the PAS, and as we have discussed, these are the subendothelial deposition of the immune complexes, and then they create the homogeneous thickening of the capillary wall, and which under the light microscopy they will observe as the wire loop lesions. Fifth category is the membranous glomerulonephritis, and here you can see the widespread thickening of the capillary wall, and there is a subepithelial immune complex deposition, and these deposition are very important in case of membranous glomerulonephritis, and this type of patient will have the nephrotic syndrome, and they will have the proteinuria. Apart from proteinuria, they will have the hypoalbuminemia and edema. So this is the same, and in the indirect immunofluorescence we can see the different type of these patterns. IgG deposits are basically seen in the mesangial and the capillary walls. They are deposited, and they will produce this on immunofluorescence. Sixth one is the class sixth one is the advanced sclerosing lupus nephritis. So there is a sclerosis or the fibrosis of more than 90% of glomeruli. They are fibrosed, and the patient whenever this number of lot of glomeruli they are undergo the fibrosis, they will produce the end stage renal disease, or they will have the chronic renal failure. And so this is the last class, class 6. So this is all about the systemic lupus erythematosus, and their morphological and the etiology, and the different type of patterns which we can observe in the immunofluorescence, and the pathogenesis. So we have discussed this condition, and I hope this video will be helpful for you. Thank you very much for watching this.